Welcome to Howling with the Wolfe, week 4, busy week. Thanks everybody for joining. We are going to talk a lot of different NFL topics. There's a lot to discuss. I know recently today the Rashard Matthews news came out, and I want to add some context that I know about the situation. I want to share with you guys about that. I want to talk about the NFL's body weight rule. If you saw earlier this week, William Hayes tore his ACL as a result of the NFL body weight rule. So I want to kind of get my thoughts on that. I want to break down the Dolphins and Patriots. It's Patriot week for Dolphins fans. I want to give you my thoughts on that and a prediction at the end of the show. And I have some questions that fans sent in earlier this week that I want to go ahead and attack. And then I'll answer you guys Q&A towards the end of this episode. So that's, busy show already. But as always, I'll have my comments pulled up on the side, and I will answer you guys' questions, hopefully towards the end of the episode. Be sure to share with all of your Facebook users and definitely interact. This is my time to be with you guys and be sort of informal and talk football. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I want to go ahead and start with the NFL body weight rule because that's something that's pretty universal no matter what team you root for. We saw earlier this week, Clay Matthews and the NFL sort of having a back and forth over what is considered roughing the passer penalty when it comes to falling on a quarterback. And I think that's something I've talked to several guys in the Dolphins locker room. It's something that frustrates a lot of defenders because it is difficult already to play defense with the NFL's rules that favor the offense. But now you're in a situation where defenders are not sure how they can attack a quarterback because, as we saw, Clay Matthews, you're penalized twice for a sack if you lay on a guy. I think that we saw today the NFL put out a ruling to say that they're not changing the rule, but they're trying to clarify what the foul is. I think this rule is really has been more than anything something that's affected the NFL game. We've seen it so far with roughing the passer penalties, 15-yard penalties lead points when there's not necessarily points. So I think that that's a ruling that the NFL will eventually have to change. We've heard from Jordan Phillips, the Dolphins defensive lineman, earlier this week, and he told me, look, we're in a situation where the people who will make these rules are never playing these games. They don't understand what we're going through, so it sounds good in their head, and they're putting it in there. So it's a lot of frustration there. William Hayes tearing his ACL is a guy who's a really important part of the Dolphins piece, and you see him lost for the season for something that he was trying to avoid a quarterback. It's frustrating for a lot of people. I understand what the NFL is trying to do here. You're trying to protect your quarterbacks, which is the NFL's biggest investment. But in the same token, you're basically telling defensive linemen, linebackers, offensive linemen that they're less important as football players because you're making their job more difficult. You're making their job more dangerous. And I think it's a scary proposition to go through from the NFL's perspective. I think that we're seeing some quarterbacks. We saw Ben Roethlisberger speak out on it and say that obviously it's not good for the viewer, NFL fans, you guys, to see all these penalties inflict the game. But for quarterbacks, it changes the way you go about it. It incentivizes you to flop as a quarterback. And that's one of my least favorite things about soccer, the fact there's so much flopping in there. If we create that in football, then the game that, I grew up loving and playing, that you guys grew up loving and watching, possibly playing, that's a game that changes now with these new rules. So I think that it's something that I definitely want to see change. A lot of defenders want to see change and offensive players. So I think the NFL is it's just a matter of time until they realize this is something that we have to tweak. Whether they call these penalties less, they don't necessarily have to change the rule, but you can continue to have these penalties that look like clean fouls, disrupt the game flow and really hurt defenders, and it's going to overall hurt the game play in the NFL. So those are my thoughts on that. If you have any questions, if you have any thoughts on that, put them in the comment section. I'll try to get to them either somewhere between or towards the end of the episode. I'm going to go ahead and hop to my next topic. For those of you who are Titans fans or those of you who are not, a little synopsis. Earlier today, the Titans released Rashard Matthews, and probably one of the most puzzling storylines of the offseason. This is a guy who was the Titans' #1 receiver last season, and he ended up signing an extension 5 weeks ago, and he asked for his release. He asked Titans general manager John Robinson for his release because he didn't feel that he was being used correctly in the offense. And when you look at that situation, the Titans have a very young receiver core. They have a receiver core with Corey Davis, Taywan Taylor, Tajay Sharp, and Rashard Matthews was making less reps, less time than each of those, less targets. And the Titans' reasoning was they were believing that he was still recovering from a torn meniscus. I talked to Rashard Matthews last night. He told me that his frustration was that he felt like there were some coaches on that staff that didn't give him a fair shot. He felt like there was a younger players on the staff that they wanted to push forward. He felt like there was a speed discrimination, so to speak. They felt like the fact that he didn't run a 4.6, he's a 4.6 guy, 4.7 guy instead of a 4.4, 4.5 guy. He felt like that really hurt his chances, and he felt like he really didn't get a fair chance. He felt like the Titans were using his injury, his previous injury on his meniscus as an excuse to give those other guys playing time, and he thought that overall was going to affect him long term. He felt like, he signed an extension, but he believed that he obviously has more years. He's a 29-year-old receiver. He felt like he was going to have more years. So his thought was that he was going to be able to get market value after his contract was up if he ended up having the same production he did in previous years. So I know there's a lot of Titans fans that say he quit on you, and there's some people who maybe on Rashard's side who say, hey, the team didn't do him right. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think that both sides sort of had their conclusion of how they felt like this situation should have gone, and maybe there was a lot of emotions involved here, but both sides decided they want to move on, and sometimes that's where you have to go with these things. You have to say, okay, move on. It's a blow for the Titans because Delaney Walker and Rashard Matthews were the Titans' two biggest receivers, and they've lost Delaney Walker to an injury. They've lost Rashard Matthews now to being released. And now you're counting on guys like Corey Davis, Taywan Taylor, Tajay Sharp to play a big role in this offense and not really have a veteran presence there to help them out. So I'm really interested to see how Corey Davis responds to this. He's now the de facto number one. There's no real competition for him there. It's his show or nobody's show. So I think it's his time to shine. You draft a guy in the first round for a reason, number 5 overall pick. And it's his opportunity to show that the Titans were correct in making that pick. So I think that Rashard Matthews will get signed by someone. He'll have some questions to answer wherever he's going to go. But my understanding is he does want to play. He does feel like he basically felt like that situation was going to eventually rotten in Tennessee, and he felt like the best move for him and for the team was to move on. So we'll see how he lands. But those are some thoughts, some reporting that I have on that. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and go to a couple of the questions that I had. I had Luis Velasquez asked me earlier this week. As always, guys, if you guys want questions to be asked earlier in the show, fire it to me on Twitter, on Facebook, and I'll go ahead and answer them early in the episode. If not, you can come on here and have a chat on the Q&A, and I'll answer some of them on the back end. You guys see the comment section on the right side. Just feel free to type your questions there, and I'll get to them towards the end of the episode. But Luis Velasquez asked me earlier this week. Basically, he's asked me this second week he's asked it, but it's changed quite a bit, so I'll answer it again. He asked, who are my top 3 and bottom 3 teams in the NFL at this point? I would say that a couple of teams that I thought were some of the top teams in this league, the Minnesota Vikings and Jacksonville Jaguars, but all lost last week. So I think that we're in a situation where this has changed quite a bit. I think we're going to see one of the best teams, if not the best team, play on Thursday Night Football in the Los Angeles Rams against the Minnesota Vikings. So I think that the LA Rams are a legit Super Bowl contender. So I would put them pretty high up there on the list. I think there's 3 undefeated teams in the league, and I think Kansas City has to be the number 2 team. That was a team that I put in my top 3 last week, and they've done nothing to fall out of that ranking. So that would probably be my number 2 team, Kansas City, with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has been balling. No other way to put it. Young quarterback, but he's looked like a vet. And I think that they have a really good chance to go far with him at the helm. So You look at LA Rams out west, the Kansas City Chiefs out west, and then you look at it out east, what's going on out there. New England was supposed to be the team running the AFC. They have struggled. The Miami Dolphins are 3-0. They played them this week. We'll talk a little bit about Miami Dolphins versus New England Patriots a little bit later in the episode. Like I mentioned earlier, Jacksonville's falling off. The AFC is starting to be open. Pittsburgh hasn't looked as good as we thought they may look through the year. So I think you've got to look at the NFC side and say, hey, that still is the strongest division in the league. So I think, it's either Philadelphia or Minnesota that are probably that number 3 team for me. I would probably say Philadelphia at this point. They're coming back with Carson Wentz. They've got some talent that's coming back injury-wise. And I think you've got to give some respect to the Super Bowl champions until they prove otherwise. So those would probably be my 3 top teams and going into week 4 of the regular season. Bottom 3 teams. One of my bottom teams actually got a win last week, but they're still my bottom 3. The Buffalo Bills, they did get a win against the Minnesota Vikings, which was shocking, probably the most shocking result of the weekend. But I do think that they're still one of the bottom 3 teams in the league. But they have risen up my rankings. I think that the worst team in the league now is the Arizona Cardinals. This is a team that was in my bottom 3 last week, and they haven't played well at all. They benched their quarterback. They're going with Josh Rosen going forward. So we'll see how the rookie quarterback does. But that's a team that's just not very good. David Johnson's not being used correctly. For fantasy football owners, I had him in fantasy. I had to trade him away because it just was frustrating every week watching them not use him correctly. So I think Arizona's definitely in the bottom 3. And then you look at the other teams across the league, I would have to say that right now you've got to put the Jets in there. The Jets are probably the team to finish out there. There's 2 AFC East teams, but that defense is really good, but they've struggled offensively. They lost to the Browns this past week. They haven't really found their clicking yet. So I think that's probably my bottom 3. So from there, we're going to go a little bit into some Patriots-Dolphins breakdown, and I'll have a prediction towards the end of the episode. As always, guys, if you have any other NFL topics you want to talk about, fire them away. I have kind of my tentacles everywhere in the league, so hopefully I can answer whatever question you guys want to know about your favorite team in the league. So right now I'm going to talk about the Dolphins-Patriots. This is a situation where the Dolphins are 7-point underdogs. They're the 3-0 team, and they're the 7-point underdogs. I think it may have moved down to 6.5. But that's a very interesting line to me. I get it. The Dolphins haven't won in Foxborough against the Patriots in a decade. And there's a lot of respect for Tom Brady, especially coming off back-to-back losses. I think this Dolphins team has one of the best chances of recent Dolphins teams to beat the Patriots. But you have to take into account that Belichick's been on this team all week, the Patriots, for their struggles and what they've got to do to avoid being 3 games down in the AFC East after the first quarter of the division. I think that one matchup that one player that I'm really intrigued to see how his workload advances is Josh Gordon. We haven't heard a lot about him this week, but my expectation is he plays. I think he was close to playing last week. Guy they traded from Cleveland. When healthy, when not in trouble, he's probably a top 15 talent at receiver in the NFL, maybe top 10. Remember, he led the league in receiving one year with playing 14 games. So I think that Josh Gordon is a game changer. He's a guy that can really open up the Patriots' passing attack that wasn't really strong throughout these years. So I think Julian Edelman comes back week 5, but for this week, Josh Gordon is going to be the most feared receiver on the Patriots roster. And, Rob Gronkowski, Gronk is going to get a lot of attention. I talked to Dolphin safety T.J. McDonald this week about what it's like to defend Gronk, and he told me that, the most frustrating thing about Gronk is that you can play great position. You can be lined up. You can have the right technique, and he can still find a way to get the ball. You just can't get frustrated. He's not the fastest guy, and I've heard this from other defenders across the league, particularly in Denver. They used to cover him all the time. He just has a knack for having a big catch radius, and his physicality allows him to really really be able to stop any type of press coverage, any type of defense you try to get him before the ball arrives. So that's going to be a really difficult matchup. I know the Detroit Lions had an anything but Gronk defense last week against the Patriots, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Dolphins enact some of that. That's where it's going to be key for a guy like Xavier Howard to lock down Josh Gordon or Chris Hogan, whoever he's on, so that if you go one-on-one against Chris Hogan or Josh Gordon, and you don't have to, Xavier Howard's locking that guy down, then that closes those windows. It allows your pass rushers like Cam Wake, like Robert Quinn, to get to Tom Brady a little bit more. So I think that how the Dolphins cornerbacks fare against Josh Gordon and the Patriots receivers is one matchup I want to watch. I think the Patriots game plan will be attack with the tight ends and the running backs. So that will be the Dolphins' biggest focus. But that means there's going to be a lot of one-on-one situations with those corners. So if those corners can handle their one-on-one situations and Dolphins put focus on covering the tight ends and the running back, then you're in a situation where you can limit Tom Brady, you can get pressure on him, you can fluster him, and that has often been the recipe for beating Tom Brady, hitting him, getting him uncomfortable, moving him off his spot. So I think that's a big recipe for the Dolphins' success, getting success from their cornerbacks. On the offensive end, we talked a lot this week about trick plays with the Dolphins. They had the Dolphins Mike Mark special, so to speak, with the Albert Wilson to Jakeem Grant passing touchdown. I think that we're going to see some more elements of that, whether it's a pass from Albert Wilson, I don't think so. But we'll see some more elements of that package and how the Patriots are able to defend the Dolphins' speed. Kenny Stills told me today that this is the fastest receiving group he's played with. Not the most dynamic. He mentioned that was in New Orleans with Jimmy Graham, with Marcus Colston, with Lance Moore, with Darren Sproles, those type guys. But he said that it is the fastest. You got a guy like Jakeem Grant, 4.3 speed, Albert Wilson, 4.3 speed, Kenny Stills, 4.3 speed. These are all guys in your receiving core. You got Danny Amendola, you got Devontae Parker. These guys are 4.4, 4.5 guys. And you've got Kenyon Drake, who's a 4.4 guy. So you've got a lot of speed that defenses have to prepare for. You've got one of the fastest tight ends in the league, and Mike Gesicki, who's going to be starting. So that really creates a lot of mismatches because there's not a lot of defenders out there that are running 4.4s, 4.3s, 4.5s. So if you get those guys in mismatches, that creates big plays like we've seen for the Dolphins. So I think my matchup to watch will be how the Patriots defend the quote-unquote gadget players of the Dolphins, which is Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant. Those type players are going to be key for the Dolphins this week. And then finally, I'm eager to see how Ryan Tannehill does. We talked a lot about Ryan Tannehill, and he's not going to have to outplay Tom Brady because Tom Brady is Tom Brady. But I think that if we need to see the same efficiency from Ryan Tannehill, which is completing 70% of his passes and so forth, if the Dolphins are going to be able to hang with and beat the Patriots in Foxborough this week. So those are my matchup breakdowns. I'm going to go quickly to a couple of you guys' questions, and then I'm going to go to X Factors, predictions, and then we'll close it out. So we were talking a little bit earlier about Rashard Matthews, and I know a few guys want to talk about this. Probably a few Titans fans here, and it's definitely not many opportunities I'll have to talk a lot of Titans football going forward. So I definitely want to take this opportunity and kind of share my insight on what's going on in that locker room with this situation. So Scott Trevathan is asking, I wouldn't have released him if he didn't want to play with us. He wouldn't be with anyone. The difficult portion of that from the Titans' perspective is that if you have a guy that's malcontent in the locker room, it breeds resentment, and it breeds a culture in the locker room where other guys know that there's someone who doesn't want to be there. And although the Titans did have his rights and they control what happens to him, when you breed a culture where you know that everybody in your roster is not all in, everybody in your roster doesn't want to be there, then that creates a 52 feet in, 1 foot out situation. And when you have that sort of destroys the team chemistry. That sort of destroys the team factor of a team when you know one or two guys aren't really buying into what you had. I think the Titans, once Rashard asked for a release, had to decide that, hey, this is something that we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and grant his release. I know John Robinson talked today and said they considered trade offers to get value for him. But you're looking at a receiver who just is making $8 million and said he doesn't want to be there. They know the Titans are in a precarious position. Teams are really going to wait that out. So I felt like the Titans didn't really have much of a choice. They could have talked to him, but from what I understand, Rashard Matthews had his mind made up. He wasn't going to come back. There was nothing the Titans could do. He felt like they had made their mind up on him, so he made their mind up on them. That's sort of basically it. Um, let's see what we got here. More questions. What's up, Chris? How you doing? How you doing, Hugo? How are you guys doing? Lewis is asking. I can understand Rashard feeling like he was being overlooked, but I wished he wanted to fight for his reps rather than just quit. Yeah, I think that's a common sentiment in the Titans fan base, and I get it. I mean, you got a guy here, you want him to be all team. I know the Titans and Taylor Lewan have been having the for the boys type statement that they've been having as their team chemistry model. I get it, but I'm of the mindset, and maybe I'm crazy for this, but I treat football just like maybe every other job that we have. If I decided tomorrow that I don't want to work for ESPN, I decided to quit. Maybe there might be some financial factors for it, but nobody would be out there saying that that I was terribly wrong with my decision or that I should be yelled at or whatever. It's whatever a man's personal decision is. So I think a lot of times because we have football in the spotlight, we forget that these people are human and that they have whatever their decisions to make, whatever it is impacting their family, whatever it is impacting their mental health, their sanity. We forget about that portion of it. So I don't have any problem with Rashard deciding that hey he was done with he felt like the situation that boiled over because teams do it all the time. How often have we seen teams cut players because they decided hey we didn't want to do this anymore? So I think we have sort of a two-faced approach on how we look at things. We kind of support the team side a lot of times when these decisions happen, and not the player side. And I think that's a little unfair. So I don't really know the mechanics of what the Titans could have done to have Rashard back on the page. But once the decision was made, I think that it was made. So I think that for Rashard, he may have felt that he wasn't given a fair chance to fight, like I alluded to earlier, if that makes sense. So your question of him fighting for reps rather than quitting, I think from his perspective, he felt like there was no use in fighting because he felt like their mind was made up. The Titans obviously said otherwise, but that was sort of his perspective from what I understand of the situation. So good question though, Lewis. And then another one from Lewis. Lewis, you guys gonna let Lewis take all the questions, but it's another good one from Lewis, and then we'll move on from here. But Lewis is saying, do you think Eric Reed signs open the door for Colin to be signed? It's a good question. I probably should have brought this up in my opening topics, but I just wrote a story on ESPN.com on Kenny Stills and his thoughts on the Eric Reed signing, and as well as Colin Kaepernick. And you guys can check that out on ESPN.com. But basically, what Kenny Stills was talking to me about today was that he was happy that Eric Reed was signed. And for you guys who don't know, Eric Reed is one of the guys who started kneeling along with Colin Kaepernick during the national anthem in protest of police brutality and social injustice. He has been out of the NFL since March of 18, and there's a large felt belief that he's being boycotted because of his protest. So the Carolina Panthers signed him today to a one-year deal, and Kenny Stills found out after practice today, and when he found out, he was happy for Eric Reed. They have a good relationship. They're friends, so he was happy. He mentioned that he's a starting safety. He's a game changer, and it took way too long for him to get a job, but nonetheless, he's happy. But one important note he mentioned is that Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job. So although there's a lot of praise going around on the Carolina Panthers, Kaepernick still hasn't got signed. Kenny still said he talked to Kaepernick today. He said he had a phone call with him before he got to practice, and Kaepernick told him that he was working out and that he was still trying to play. He was ready to go. It's the quote there, ready to go. And obviously we know Kaepernick hasn't played since March of 2017. I don't know if he ever plays football in the NFL again. Just with what we've seen, I could be surprised. We've seen Eric Reed. I wasn't sure if Eric Reed was going to play again, and obviously he is. So, but the way that We've seen NFL teams sort of hide from the Colin Kaepernick thing. It would really shock me if a team took a chance on him at this point, especially being out of the game for a year and a half. We've seen teams need quarterbacks and go elsewhere to retreads. I've seen guys like not to throw slugs on them, but Austin Davis just re-signed with the Titans this week as a backup quarterback now that Blaine Gabbert's hurt. I can say with absolute certainty that Austin Davis is now on the same playing field as Colin Kaepernick. So you're seeing teams make decisions that are clearly based on not wanting some of the extracurriculars that may come with signing Colin Kaepernick. So I don't believe that Eric Reid signing opens the door for Colin Kaepernick. I asked Kenny Stills the same thing. He said that it doesn't necessarily. He said he hopes it does, but he's not super confident that Eric Reid signing means Colin Kaepernick signing, and I'm not either. Real quickly, we're going to go ahead and go to X Factors predictions, and if you guys have any final questions before I leave out of here, get them in. As always, you can follow me here on Facebook, like my page, subscribe to my YouTube channel where I'll post these videos every week, and invite your friends to be involved with these chats. This is a Howling with the Wolfe thing I want to do, taking maybe 30 minutes out of my Thursday to talk to you guys about football and what I know, or what I can't print on .com or don't have the room to. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope we can continue to do more of these and continue to build this community. So follow me right here. You see down here the Facebook channel. That's my Twitter channel, and I'll post all my articles, all my videos. I went out to Coconut Grove to talk to Frank Gore earlier this week, and I posted video and stories on that to show what he's doing in the community. So if you want to see those type things, continue to come back, continue to read my work, and I'll try to give you something that you're not getting out here from other NFL writers, from other Dolphins writers or whatever. So thank you guys as always, and quick X Factors for this game. And as always, my X Factors aren't guys that are typically in national radar. These are guys who I think can make a difference in the game, but may not get their name called much. I think that we're going to start on last week I said Devontae Parker, and he had a really big grab, and I think that that's something that we forgot about a lot. So I think that he ended up having a factor in that game. This week, I'm going to look at center Daniel Kilgore. I know a lot of times we don't talk about offensive linemen unless they do something wrong, but he's the captain on the offensive line side. He's the guy who runs the snaps, and he has been really setting the stage for a lot of the successful pass blocking that we've seen from the Dolphins going forward. I think that he's an X factor this week because of the run game. Dolphins had one of their worst rushing games of the season last year, and it gets lost because they won. But Kenyon Drake and Frank Gore cannot get off blocks. They cannot get anything going. I think the Dolphins are going to need to shorten this game and run the football extremely well if they're going to win. And it starts with Daniel Kilgore up front. He's a guy who can sometimes get pushed around by the nose tackles, the defensive tackles up front. If he can have success in the running game, if he can have success when they do zone blocking and pull, then you can see some big plays for Kenyon Drake. This feels like a big Kenyon Drake game. Kenyon Drake is the closest thing the Dolphins have to a star on the offensive side. That's what I said going into the season. But he's had a very lackluster start to his year, very pedestrian start. So week 4 against the Patriots, a team that he has had success on against in the past, is his chance to kind of come up. And I think it starts with Daniel Kilgore up front. And so that I think that Daniel Kilgore is my number 1 X factor. Number 2 X factor, I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to point to Jerome Baker, the Dolphins rookie linebacker from Ohio State. He's a guy who started the year as a starter, kind of lost his job a little bit to Chase Allen, but he's going to play a lot of reps this week. Chase Allen is out with a foot injury. He hasn't officially been ruled out, but he's missed the first 2 days of practice, and it's looking like he's not going to play. So that's your 4th linebacker not going to play. So that means it's going to be Jerome Baker a lot of time playing, trying to cover some of the Patriots' backs, trying to cover James White, trying to cover Sony Michel. And that's going to be something the Patriots love to check down on. He may even get some time against Gronk. So Jerome Baker, it's your time, rookie, to step up to the stage. Big game in Foxborough against the Patriots. How are you going to do? Are you ready for the big show? So number 2, he's my number 2 X factor. And as always, my number 3 X factor is going to be on the Patriots side of the ball, the opposing team, and seeing what they do. Uh, excuse me. Number three X factor is going to be Jonathan Jones, the Patriots slot cornerback. The Patriots have had varied success in the slot, but they've struggled overall defensively this year. They haven't had a lot of success stopping teams against the run, against the pass at all. They've been rough on that side of the ball. It's been rough to see. But particularly in the slot is where the Dolphins have a lot of success. They have a lot of good players who can play out of the slot. Kenny Stills is probably one of the most productive slot receivers in the league, and he doesn't even play the slot most of the time. Danny Amendola, homecoming game, he could have very easily been one of my X factors, and essentially he is because he's playing against Jonathan Jones. But that slot position is going to be tested quite a bit with Danny Amendola, with Kenny Stills. You may see some of Jakeem Grant inside. You'll see some Albert Wilson inside. These are all guys who can play slot, can get big plays. How does Jonathan Jones handle those guys up front? So that's my three X factors. Prediction for you guys. You're not going to like it, Dolphins fans. I've got 31-23 Patriots. I think the Patriots end Dolphins' undefeated streak this week. It's tough for Tom Brady to lose 3 games in a row. I think the Dolphins are a good team. I think they're a potential playoff team, but they're not in the league to challenge the Patriots for the AFC East quite yet. They need progress, and I think we'll see that this week. That's why I'm predicting 31-23. That's all. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Louis, for your comments. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. See you guys next week, same time, and we'll talk some more football.